We're live. All right. Welcome to the 2019 NFL Draft Match. I'm Jerry McDonald from the Bay Area News Group here inside Raiders headquarters. About an hour until the Cardinals go on the clock with the number one overall pick. We've got some reader questions that you guys have submitted on Twitter throughout the week. I guess we'll start off with just a general question. First we'll say what should the Raiders do with the number 4 pick, assuming they keep it, and then what will the Raiders do? Because those could be two completely different things. What do you think they should do?
I think they should stay where they are, and I think that sometimes that's the best thing to do. They have 4 picks in the first round at 4 and 24 and 27. I think if you remember the last really good draft they had in 2014, they waited. They had the number 5 pick. They desperately wanted Khalil Mack, and as it turned out, Jadeveon Clowney went first, Greg Robinson went second, Blake Bortles went third, Sammy Watkins went fourth, and Khalil Mack fell right into their lap. And then Derek Carr fell into their lap in the second round after other quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel and Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater were all taken in front of him. So I'd say trust your board and stay where you are.
And I know there's been a lot of chatter about will they take a quarterback, or are they sold on Derek Carr? A lot of the questions we got was, is there a chance they take Kyler Murray? What about Dwayne Haskins? I know the Haskins buzz kind of picked up this morning. Just keep it simple. I don't think you can get cute with it. Take a pass rusher. They had 13 sacks last year, worst in the NFL. The second worst team in the NFL had 30. So that just showed you how far off the Raiders were. The last time a team finished with that few of sacks in a season was 2008 when the Chiefs had 10. So you got to get a pass rusher, whoever that may be. If Kyler Murray goes number 1, which seems to be the common sentiment here, Nick Bosa goes number 2. Let's say Quinnen Williams goes number 3. You still have Kentucky edge rusher Josh Allen. You have Ed Oliver, the defensive tackle from Houston. So I think you just stay at 4 and keep it simple. Now, if 3 defensive linemen go in the top 3, let's say it's Williams, Bosa, and Allen, or Williams, Bosa, and Oliver, then maybe you explore trading back, because there would be a good deal of teams that would be willing to trade up for a quarterback. Let's say Kyler Murray or Dwayne Haskins. Maybe you do trade back, stockpile even more picks. So let's hop into some of your questions. Do you think adding a wide receiver or running back in the first round is a good option, considering the talent level of the two positions are deep in skill sets with multiple players in the draft? I think they do need a number 3 wide receiver. I don't think it's at the top of their priorities right now. Running back, I think it's more of a need, especially since the news came out this week that Marshawn Lynch is not planning to play again. The Raiders maybe have shifted their focus of if they'll welcome him back. Do you think they should add an offensive skill player tonight?
I think they should, but I'm almost very seldom think you should go for a running back in the first round, because you can just find them later. And it's been proven time and again that you can find a running back later in the draft. The last time the Raiders drafted a back they used a lot, Latavius Murray was a later pick. I think you find guys like that, and you look for other positions in the first round. As for wide receiver, I think since they've got Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams, they can use a slot receiver. I don't know if J.J. Nelson's going to be that guy, but I don't know that a third receiver is a way to go either. I mean, I think you load up on defense, or if you're going to take a receiver, you look for a tight end. You hope that like Noah Fant is there at 24 and 27, but not necessarily a slot guy.
Next one we've got. Why go after Quinnen Williams when we have 4 quality defensive tackles already? Now, the thing with Quinnen Williams, I think he's more of a pass rusher, and when I say pass rusher, I'm not saying they should necessarily take a defensive end or an edge rusher with their first pick. Quinnen Williams can really push the pocket. He can stop the run. He had 8 sacks and 19.5 tackles for loss playing defensive tackle at Alabama last season. I think at that point, if he's still on the board, he's easily the best player available. And like I said, I don't think you can get cute. Yes, you have Mo Hurst, P.J. Hall. You drafted both of them last year. You have Jonathan Hankins, Justin Ellis. But Quinnen Williams, at least obviously the big thing of any draft is you never know how these guys are going to pan out. But based on how Quinnen Williams played last year, the common sentiment about him in the NFL community is that he could be the best player in this draft. And if you're lucky enough to still have him on the board at number 4, I think you take him, because you can never have enough players who can rush the passer regardless of where they play on the defensive line.
Yeah, there's a ripple effect with a guy like that in the middle, of the guy that's that good, that you don't worry about the other defensive tackles that you have. And his presence could make someone like Arden Key be a pretty good player in year 2. if he is as good as everybody seems to think he is, I mean, and people have invoked Warren Sapp. I mean, Gruden will be the first to tell you that Warren Sapp was everything to that Tampa Bay defensive line, and probably all the damage Simeon Rice did from the outside, or a lot of it was because of Warren Sapp's presence in the middle.
Some of you have asked about the potential for the Raiders to trade up. There has been a lot of talk about the Raiders trading back. Could they trade up for someone like Kyler Murray? First of all, I think they like Dwayne Haskins better, so I don't think they're going to end up with Kyler Murray regardless because he's going to go number one. Or could they trade up to get Nick Bosa? I think he's the best edge rusher in this draft if you want to separate Bosa and Williams. But Mike Mayock has really talked about how they have too many needs to really – I don't want to – he hasn't said I'm not going to trade up, but he's talked about how this team has a wide variety of needs. Do you think if they really want a guy like Nick Bosa, they would trade up 2 spots to the 49ers spot and take him if it means sacrificing some later picks despite all the needs this team has?
No, I got the impression from Mike that he would rather add picks than subtract them, and he talked about I believe it was a 20 through 60. Is that what it was his?
He said 20 through 60, yes.
Where that was sort of like, he said that's a good place to go fishing. And as it stands now, the Raiders only got 35, and they don't have anything between 35 and 60, I believe.
Right.
And so, I think they would probably go the other way rather than trade up. I mean, if Kyler Murray goes first, then I think you're just happy with, and any of those 3 defensive linemen, any order they go, you take the third one, and you're going to do well. Bosa gives me a little concern because of the injury thing, but I think, even though he's the best outside guy, and that's basically what they need. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen worries me a bit because he did a lot of dropping back in college. He's more of an outside 3-4 player. Would be, Gunther's scheme doesn't really play to that, although that would be his job to make it work if they were to go that way.
That's a good point. I think, obviously the talk of players rising and falling on draft boards this close to the draft is pretty much all, I don't want to say nonsense, but it's buzz generated, teams' benefits. It's never like actually true. So I think we've seen Josh Allen drop a little bit. That could be why. It could be real. It could be fake. We'll see in less than an hour. Another thing you guys asked is who's really calling the shots up there tonight? And I think that's been a common question throughout the last couple weeks. Gruden well. We've seen Mayock the past couple weeks. We've seen Gruden talk positively about him. It's definitely a different dynamic than Gruden and McKenzie. But in your opinion, who do you think has the most influence up in that room tonight?
Well, John has the influence. John makes the pick, but he can be sold. I mean, that's the way Al Davis did it. Al Davis made the picks, but he was willing to be talked out of something and talked into something. And I think John operates in much the same way that Al did. He will have the final word, but he can be talked into something. And if Mayock makes a good enough case for something, he'll go with that pick, and then he'll hold it over Mayock's head, saying, "Remember, you talked me into this guy." So. And that's the way John operates with a long needle. So.
And lastly, we'll touch on this one. I think it's something a lot of people have been on edge about regarding Derek Carr. Will the Raiders take a quarterback, whether it's Kyler Murray, whether it's Dwayne Haskins, whether it's Drew Lock, who Gruden and Mayock saw at the Senior Bowl when he played for their team, if Drew Lock drops to the end of the first round. Do you see them taking a quarterback tonight? And I know we talked about this earlier in the workroom, why you don't think John Gruden will, at least this early. Do you think Gruden will take a quarterback later? And what is your feeling on how they feel about Derek Carr? I personally think they want to see one more year of Derek Carr. They're surrounding him with wide receivers, a new offensive lineman. They've talked a lot about surrounding him with the right pieces. I think he's not guaranteed into Vegas, but I think they'll draft a guy like Ryan Finley or Gardner Minshew, who's also at the Senior Bowl, to possibly back him up or be a third stringer. And then if Derek doesn't work out, then they'll turn to really looking at a replacement quarterback. But I don't think they take one tonight.
No, I think they're fully intending to go on into the season with Derek Carr as their quarterback, and he's got a year of the system under his belt, and then he's he considering his supporting cast last year, you can make this case that he had a pretty decent year. I would definitely go forward with him. You have Antonio Brown coming in, who you want a veteran quarterback, throw into that guy rather than a rookie. Mm-hmm. And John's history is really not to draft a quarterback high, first round style, and then put him in the lineup. I mean, he had a shot to draft Aaron Rodgers and didn't do it. His two highest picks he ever made as or at least he didn't draft Marcus Tuiasosopo, but he sold Al Davis on it. Bucks, they drafted Chris Sims in the same years that Aaron Rodgers came out in the third. They waited till the third round and took Chris Sims. John likes veterans that know the offense. But as it gets later in the first round, if there's a guy, if they really like Locke or the Duke quarterback,
If Dwayne Haskins starts
or one of
dropping
these guys,
to the later of the teens, do the Raiders trade up and try and
I
get
don't know
him?
about the teens, but if you were to fall enough to either 24, 27, yeah, then I think they might. I mean, then you do the Pat Mahomes thing. You take the guy, you sit him behind Derek, and if Derek plays fantastic, you got yourself a hell of a problem. You got a quarterback already, and you got another young, good quarterback because you could never have too many good ones. And the second one would be affordable. So I would definitely think it would be a doable thing.
Right. Okay. Let's see. How many more minutes do we have till the draft? 4:17. So there's 43 more minutes. So the Cardinals are on the clock, 10 minutes per pick. Raiders currently picking number 4. You know, reports out there, they're like, trade up, trade back. We'll see. Gruden and Mayock will talk tonight. For Jerry McDonald, I'm Matt Schneidman. Thanks for tuning in.